What is going on, gamers? Aevatrex here, and today we're gonna go ahead and talk about guilds, but more importantly, how to lead one and how to grow your guild. Now, I've been getting that question quite a bit. How do I go ahead and start a guild, get people to join my guild? How do I grow it? So I'm gonna go ahead and give you my top 5 things that you're going to need in order to start and grow your guild successfully. Now, the number one thing is you need to be ready for responsibilities. As a leader, you cannot just be another member, okay? You need to take responsibility for pretty much everything that happens in your guild. You need to be ready for diplomacy, you need to be ready for war, resources, handling 100 other members, etc. You gotta remember that when another member does something in your guild, usually the one that they will go to is the leader, and that is going to be you. And as a leader, you have to make sure that you're on top of everything, because if you're not, that's how people get disgruntled, they leave, and then it starts a snowball effect, and the next thing you know, instead of staying on top of it, your guild is falling apart. So you gotta be ready for responsibilities, but even if you are ready for responsibilities, you have to make sure you are on top of everything. It's really important, because if you're not, that's going to be a failing guild. Now, number 2 is pretty obvious, but needless to say, you need to have activity in your guild. What I mean by activity is you need to have members that are constantly logging on, that are helping each other, that are hunting monsters, etc. Like, for instance, right here, when I log in, I like to see 285 gifts that I can go ahead and collect. Now, of course, every guild is a little bit different. Lower tier guilds maybe don't get as many gifts, etc. But still, you want to know that your guys are logging in, they're hunting monsters, they're growing their account and doing their part to advance as a guild. If you have, for instance, I'll give you a perfect example. Let's say you're a smaller guild, maybe 2 billion might guild, right? And you have this player that's about 350 million might in your guild, but he doesn't do anything. He goes days without logging in, he doesn't join any rallies, he doesn't provide any resources, etc. That is not a player worth keeping. The might looks great per se, like, oh, 350 million might player, but in the end, if they're not really pulling their weight, is it really worth having in your guild? So that's what I mean by activity. Don't fall in love with might. Fall in love with how active people are and how helpful they are, because those are the people that if you get 100 of them in a guild, you're gonna go places, okay? You're gonna grow together, and eventually you're going to become something greater than just might that can disappear in a blink of an eye, okay? So activity is very important. Everybody knows this, but not a lot of people practice it. Make sure that you do. Now, the number 3 thing is you need to have the right players. Now, when I say the right players, I don't just mean activity, because obviously that goes along with it. An active player is usually a good player. But what I mean by that is, if your guild is a warring guild, then having a player that never joins any rallies, doesn't contribute to resources for healing, etc., that's probably not the right type of player for you. Conversely, if you are a farming guild, a player that's always trying to war is probably not the best player for you, because maybe your guild is not going to have enough troops to fill the rally, and then that's going to stress people out. They're gonna go bananas because they can't fill a rally, etc., etc. So it's all about having the right players that fit your guild. If you're somewhere in the middle, make sure that the players that you have can be content gathering and farming and growing their accounts, as well as maybe getting into some skirmishes here and there. But you need to first of all figure out what kind of guild you are striving to be, and making sure that you are getting the players that are going to help that guild get there. Don't just, again, don't get players just because of might, etc. Make sure that you're getting the right active player into your guild, because if you do, I'm telling you right now, even if you start small, you're gonna go places. Now, number 4, of course, this is something that can be avoided if you followed my number 1, 2, and 3 so far. But again, it is 100 members, so it's almost unavoidable, is drama. Drama can tear a guild apart overnight. So make sure that you keep drama to a minimum, or you at least get some players that are not about that life, okay? There's always going to be some sort of drama in guilds, That's fine. I'm not saying that you should never have any, but you, as a leader, you cannot let that get a little out of hand. You need to be able to figure out when it's fine to just let it go, and people might have their disagreements, but they're talking about it. They're not actively like arguing or anything like that. But sometimes when it gets out of hand, you need to be able to step in and stop it, because if you don't, then later, couple days down the line, it's going to come up again, and it's going to come up again, and it's going to get to the point where it becomes an issue as a guild, not just between two people, and then people are going to start picking sides, and you see where this is going. So that's why drama is never a good thing if it's prolonged. If it just happens and then you talk about it and it's done, it's fine. That's not a big thing. But if it's that kind of drama where it just drags on for days and people have to pick sides and all that, you as a leader need to make sure that you step in and you nip it in the bud. And if you don't, again, we go back to my number one. You got to be ready for responsibilities. As a guild leader, you need to be ready to either kick the person that's causing the issues, etc., because if not, it's going to cause a whole guild to break down. So you got to make sure that you have your rules, your set rules, and you enforce them, because if you don't, and all these drama starts going on and it never stops, it's not going to go anywhere. And my number 5 and final one, and I believe this one gets overlooked a lot, but I really believe this is seriously important. As a guild leader, especially in a game like Lords Mobile, where there's so many aspects to the game, whether it's recruiting, warring, resources, etc., you need to have great, not just good, great R4s. This is one of the most crucial things in order to make your guild grow. You yourself, if you think you're gonna be able to handle everything all the time, you're wrong. Okay, you're just wrong. I've never met a leader that's being able to handle everything all the time, no problems. Okay, it's 100 members, it's a lot of different things going on. For instance, right here with CAE, I have amazing R4s that we each take our role and they each help us, and they're basically like an extension of me. We're all in it together. I don't just do something and just do it. We all have a vote. So it's really good to have R4s, but also not just good R4s, okay? You need to have R4s that are not what I would call yes men. And what I mean by that is, okay, if I say, okay, let's do this, I don't need my R4s to always say, yes, that's always the case, yes. You need to have R4s that can look at a situation and tell you, okay, well, hold on, what about this? Or, oh, hold on, I don't think that's right. Because if you have R4s that just always go with what you say, then at the end of the day, who's there to check you as a leader? And as a leader, you're not always going to be right. You're going to have times where you're wrong, and this is where the R4s step in. And that's why I would suggest, if you're going to be running a guild, to have really good R4s that have their own voice and their own opinion, not just going by what you said, and have a vote when you're deciding on important things, because that's a very good way of avoiding issues and a very good way of just me saying, okay, well, let's just go to this kingdom. Oh, okay, everybody's just going to be saying, okay, without checking anything. That's just going to lead to disaster. And if you do not have R4s, you're just not going to get very far. So that was my 5 things that I really think are very crucial for a guild to not only get started up and grow, but to sustain. I mean, we've been around for over a year, and all we've been doing is growing. People have come and gone, and that's fine. People will come and go, but you got to make sure that as long as you hold your core in your guild, that you're not going to go anywhere. So I will also say this, even though I just gave you 5 reasons for a guild, and as a guild leader, there is many more than 5 reasons or 5 different things that you should do to run a guild, but we'll be here all day. Hopefully you can take some of these tips and apply it if you are going to be starting a guild, or if you have a guild yourself right now, and hopefully it'll help you in the future. But yeah, appreciate you guys for watching, and until later, bye.